say the word, and the word is love. Thank you. That was awesome. I love our new equipment. It just sounds amazing. The Beatles have nothing on you guys, I'm telling you. That was amazing. Thank you. How's everybody today? Good, good. It's a beautiful day. We've had some beautiful days. I hope you have been able to get outside and just enjoy some of this beautiful weather. The evenings have been amazing, haven't they? It's hard to come in at night. I do want to share with you that yesterday, your board members, along with Dee and I, did a 4.5-hour board training with Reverend Tony Boehm from Unity Worldwide Ministries. And I share that with you because I am so in awe of the dedication of our board, that they would come on a Saturday and give 4.5 hours to do what they do better. So thank you to our board members, and thank you to Dee and thank you to Reverend Tony Boehm for being there. So, yes, thank you. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. So this month is Pride Month, LGBTQIA+, and next week is Juneteenth, where we celebrate the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And these are two very important events for our spiritual community to participate in, and I'm going to talk about that more in just a minute. But this week, I'm going to talk about the LGBTQIA+, our family and friends. But I am not speaking for them, because I cannot speak for them. But I'm going to speak into some things today. So I want to share first what Pride is. Pride, first of all, is a celebration of diversity, and it's a platform for advocacy. And, you know, for us, we are a part of the Pride event downtown because we do want our LGBTQIA+ community to know that there is a church, and there are many progressive churches in our community that are a place for them to come to where they're going to feel supported and valued and seen and loved. And Pride is also a reminder of the ongoing effort for equality, but also for equity, and I'm going to speak more into equity next week. But first and foremost, Pride is an affirmation of the inherent dignity and worth of every individual, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And we celebrate this with our second principle, which is I am, that we are all children of God, that we are all emanations of the one source. God saw everything that God made, and God declared that it was good. Yes. So there's no mistake in how you were created. I just want to say that right off. There's no mistake in how you were created, no matter what. Now, I am going to step out and I think speak for the majority of us here, because I think in a community like this, most of us really desire to be allies. And I know online, as people listen online as well. But please know that we have not walked in your shoes. And we don't know what we don't know. So please know that if I ever say or do anything that would seem offensive to the LGBTQI+ community, I am open to learning. And I just ask that you teach us gently and with love, because we want to learn. And I love the saying that when we know better, we do better. And, you know, for me, I kind of translate that to when I know better, I choose to do better. So that's, I know, very important to most all of us. Okay, so I want to tell you that as I look back on my childhood and growing up, and I think I grew up in Ohio. I grew up in a very small town, and it was a very white town. I'm going to say it was probably pretty conservative. And that was like in the 60s and the 70s. And you talk about a culture of don't say gay, and even more so a culture of don't be gay. And so gay people went into hiding. Of course they went into hiding. So I didn't see you. And I didn't know what was happening with you. And when HIV/AIDS came around, and I was awake and aware enough at that time to be absolutely disgusted by this, but the message was, oh, you know, you sinners, you brought this on because you're an aversion to God. Isn't that sickening to think about that was the message? And so I want to say that I am so sorry that you ever heard that, and even more so that you ever lived into that message. I am so sorry that you were ever made to feel that you were less than anybody else. I am so sorry that you ever felt unworthy. And I am so sorry that you have had to, and here's the thing, my friends, sometimes still have to make a choice not to be authentic in a situation due to the possibility of emotional, spiritual, mental, or physical harm. And that still happens today. And that's really sad to me that that still happens today. So we're happy that you are all here today. And today what I'm going to do is there's a booklet that Unity put out. Oh, turn it on. It's amazing what happens when you... Okay, called Worthy. And the stories in this book will absolutely open your heart. And if you are in the LGBTQIA community, if you're listening to this message, you can come here and you can get a booklet. And this booklet it will remind you that, again, God did not make a mistake with your manifestation. You were created just exactly as you are, and you're perfect just the way that you are. So I'm going to share with you a few stories today from this booklet. And my idea behind sharing these stories is, I think that all of us grew up with things that we've had to work through, right? But there's groups of people that have had a lot more to deal with than many individuals have. And so I want to share these stories as a way of sharing what some of their journey was, but also how finding a community like Unity changed their lives. To walk into a place where they were told that they were good, where they were told that they were loved, that they were valued, that they were seen, changed their lives. So the first one I'm going to start with is Reverend Ken Daigle. Now, Ken is the senior minister at Unity of San Francisco. He also served on Unity Worldwide Ministries board. And so these are his words. He said, "I learned at a very young age that it was not safe to be myself. When I was 11 years old, Time magazine had a front cover with the title, The Homosexual in America. And I saw the magazine when it came to our house, and I asked my mother, who are those men? And she told me they were very sick and disgusting people. And I felt the knot tighten in my stomach as I flipped through the pages and looked at the story, because I knew I was one of them, and I had to go into hiding. Hiding, however, was never easy for me because I was ridiculed throughout grammar school by other boys and by the nuns for my effeminate behavior. I was then tormented and beaten at home by my father, who was determined, as he put it, to make a man out of me. High school was a little easier because I found other people like me, got into drama club, and where I could be honored and celebrated. I was outed by my mother after high school, who listened to a phone conversation that I had with my boyfriend. Thrown out of my family's home and sent on search for answers, I found myself then staring at our family priest, who told me to go and marry a woman and have children. I walked out of his office, and I knew I could not live that lie. I walked away from the Catholic Church and from my spiritual life. I was ultimately diagnosed with HIV positive, and at that time, there was no cure, there was no seemingly hope, there was no treatment. But a friend gave him Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. And anybody who knows about Louise Hay knows that Louise Hay was a pioneer in the HIV/AIDS movement and working with gay men who had HIV. And then he said, I found my way to Unity via A Course in Miracles, but because of unhealed self-loathing, I started to numb my dark feelings and needing more and more anesthesia, so much so that I found myself in rehab once again, desperate for answers. Luckily for me, a 12-step program led me back to Unity, where I set about my spiritual work of recovery. It's been 32 years since my HIV diagnosis and 17 years since my last drug or drink. I am living a life beyond my wildest dreams, married to a man I love with 3 beautiful children. Reverend Ken Daigle. Yeah. This is Reverend Michael Gott. Reverend Michael Gott is the lead minister at Unity of Houston, one of our big churches in the Unity movement. He's also an incredible musician. If you have a chance, look him up on YouTube and listen to his music. Now, Michael grew up in a very loving family where he felt very loved and protected most of the time. He said that there were signals that there was something wasn't right, that throughout his childhood he was given both silent and not so silent messages about who he was expected to be as a boy, as a white person, and as a Christian. And early on, he began to realize that he could not meet those expectations in many ways. So when he was just 3 years old, he was given a cast-off doll by some friends that lived down the street. And he said this doll was so ragged, it had the eyes that open and close, and one eye was stuck, halfway, and the hair was mostly pulled out, but he loved this doll. Well, he brought it to Sunday school one morning, and it became very clear to him that he had broken some tribal law. His dad was not okay with him having brought a doll, and it was taken away, and he was devastated by that. And he said he cried and cried and cried, but eventually he got over it, or so he thought. Because years later, in a spiritual exercise during a retreat, the memory of the doll surfaced with all the grief and all the confusion he felt at age 3. And they were then asked to name the belief that was formed in the consciousness at the time of this event. And here was the belief: if I show up as I truly am, the people I love are harmed. Now, can you imagine taking on that belief at the age of 3 and unconsciously carrying that belief up until this point? He realized that at a deep and unconscious level, he had been editing himself his whole life so that the people that he cared about wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Now, I know this happens for many of us, and I think it's good to do that work, no matter who we are, to go back and look at what some of those unconscious beliefs are that are driving our life. His words: I came out as a gay man many years before at age 19, and by the time of this exercise, I had already done significant internal work. I thought I was living authentically, but it stayed with me and shaped me. So many times I stopped myself from saying what I really felt or expressing what I really wanted because I knew my partner or my friends or my family members wouldn't like it. I also discovered, in that moment of clarity, I was able to take a stand for authenticity no matter the cost. I was being asked to live my authentic life on a whole new level. Does that authentic life sound familiar to you? It's our mission statement. In these past years, I have experienced a new freedom and a sense of personal power that I didn't even know was possible. I also discovered that this greater power, guess what, was rooted in vulnerability. Woohoo! That's a big word. My willingness to bring all of me to my relationships, even when it's scary to do so, has led to deeper connections and truer intimacy than I have ever known. And before his father passed away, they made amends, and he became one of his champions. This next one, many of you will recognize. This is Reverend Mark Fuss. For any of us who have gone to Unity Village for our annual pilgrimage, Reverend Mark Fuss is who takes us on our tour. He is also somebody who I've had the opportunity to do some of my LUT training with. His words: I am a gay man, a Unity minister, and a portion of God made manifest. Now that's H. Emily Cady. I am a portion of God made manifest. Let's say that together. I am a portion of God made manifest. If you are a portion of God made manifest, is there anything wrong with you? No. You were created perfectly as you are. He shares that growing up in the Deep South and coming of age in the 70s, he was immersed in the traditional Christian theology of sin, fall, redemption, and that the time he spent studying at a fundamental Christian college was a gut-wrenching exercise in self-loathing, shame, and guilt. He said, my inevitable crisis of faith was like a tsunami of anger, darkness, and shame. And in his 20s, he came out with abandon, dismissing religion from his life and rarely looking back. He focused on his career and clubs Dancing, drinking, promiscuity, and drugs took center stage of his life. And he said this roller coaster seemed to work well for 2 decades until it didn't. Mark hit bottom of the barrel when he found himself homeless in New York City, strung out and lost. This is our Mark. Early one morning, while sitting on a bench, the thought entered his mind, there must be more than this. So he moved to Florida, and although the next 2 years were a struggle, he began to put himself back together. In 2001 was when he first entered a Unity church, and he was stunned and overwhelmed by the love, acceptance, and the joy that he found there. And this was the minister's message. God is good. Your essence is of God. Therefore, you are inherently good, not fallen, sinful, broken, but spiraling upward, an expression of God made manifest. Wow. Wow. And I think I know for myself, and I think for probably most of us, if we came from a different background of the sinful redemption, when we came into Unity, it was just like, what? I'm good? I'm worthy just as I am? It's like, it really is like you're a dry sponge and you're like, drinking that message in. He became active in the church, singing, becoming a prayer chaplain, and serving on the board, and eventually became a Unity minister. He said, I share as widely as possible the same message as I heard that first Sunday: one presence, one power, God the good, and you are a portion of God made manifest. He says it's a message that many of my brothers and sisters in the LGBTQIA community desperately long to hear. And the last story that I want to share this morning, one presence, one power, God the good, is Evan Wilkins. And the title of this story is The Day She Disappeared. So these are his words. She made her way to her desk, going through the motions of booting up her computer and adjusting her chair, same as she always did. Today, however, was different. Today was the day everything would change. She knew something that others in the office did not know, that she was going to disappear. The person her coworkers had come to know during the past 2 years would walk out that day, never to return. The 2 women who shared her workspace had invited her to lunch. Lunch with the ladies had been on her calendar for a week now. The conversations were sure to include husbands, kids, soccer games, and daycare. She could seldom relate to that. Yet the lunches seemed to be an unspoken obligation. It was understood at the office that women went out to lunch with women and men went out to lunch with men who wished to be the odd man out. She supposed she liked the women well enough, but that really wasn't the point. They had no knowledge of her impending disappearance. With an hour left in her workday, she returned to her desk to find an email summoning her to Human Resources, and just as she had planned. That email was about to change her life. The time had arrived. Heart racing, palms sweating, she knocked on HR's door and entered. It was then, by changing her name in the official personal records, that she officially disappeared. 2 years later, the sun brightly announced itself on his morning commute to work. He scratched at the scruff of his beard, wishing he'd taken the extra time to shave that morning. And greeted as usual by his coworkers who had offered support and acceptance during his transition, including some former Marines, he made his way to his desk, booted up his computer, and a notice on the screen let him know that the computer's memory was full, prompting him to sort through some unused documents and programs. So he felt himself propelled, and he came upon a document about this particular thing, and he felt himself propelled back to that day of her disappearance as if he had entered a time machine. How frightened she must have felt. He remembered watching her hands tremble as she opened the door to HR, where the journey began, and her secret was revealed to everyone. He remembered that moment so well because he had been she. She had disappeared to bring him forth. She sacrificed herself so that he could live. He said, I know this so well because this is my story. I lived in the world cloaked in skin I always knew was not my own, worn like a suit that never quite seemed to fit. Until the day she disappeared, I spent my life in hiding, much like a scared, shy child, arms wrapped tightly around the legs of a protective parent. The Native Americans have a term for people like me, two-spirit. I have learned many things since the day she disappeared, things I wish I had known and could have shared with her when she was so frightened. I would tell her not to worry about finding someone who would love her because in the end, it would all be okay. I would tell her not to worry about being accepted by others because the people who counted would continue to show unconditional love even in the face of adversity. I would tell her just how much of a gift it is to be two-spirited, to be able to see the world through this wonderful lens. I would tell her what a privilege it is to exist within a community that bonds together even when others attempt to break it apart. I would tell her that she is loved and divine regardless of what others may say. I would tell her about the wonderful, joyous freedom that awaits at the end of that dark tunnel. And most of all, I would tell her quite simply to live her truth, to live life in the most authentic way possible, for it is through authenticity that we become strong. And he ends it by saying, the day she disappeared was the day that I was born. These stories, my friends, these stories are why we talk about this on a Sunday morning. These stories are why we have Pride t-shirts. These stories are why you'll see LGBTQIA plus colors. These stories are why we participate in the Pride event every year downtown. It is so important that, well, let me go here first. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of LGBTQIA plus people, beautiful beings, who haven't heard this message, who are still struggling out there, believing that something is wrong with them. I took this from the Newport Academy. It says the rate of attempting suicide among LGBTQ teens is more than twice the rate of suicide attempts among all U.S. teens due to the societal and relationship challenges that these young people face. These challenges include stigma, family rejection, bullying, threats of injury, violence, and increasingly limited access to gender-affirming health care. Higher rates of depression among the LGBTQ population also lead to higher rates of substance abuse as a form of self-medication for mental health issues. Bobby Delmar put this on our Unity of Springfield connection group. He said, I overheard someone last week ask my friend why Pride still exists after his talk, which James did, a wonderful talk on the Pride colors. And if you're wondering about the Pride colors, go to Unity of Springfield. He did a really awesome post on the Pride colors and how they relate to Unity's 12 powers. So Unity of Springfield, go and check that out. He said, some of us lived in such a toxic environment that we felt being dead would be a better option. And the post is, Pride is important because somewhere out there is a confused teenager who still thinks that maybe being dead is better than being gay, and that's not okay. And that's a reality. And again, so participating in these events, talking about this, these are social justice things. We don't see this as a political issue. These are human rights issues. These are human rights. Every single one of us deserves to feel that we are safe wherever we go and that we're not going to be ridiculed because we were born different than somebody else. These are human rights issues. I am so thrilled that there were over, 58 of you bought these wonderful t-shirts. I'm so thrilled about that. And this Saturday, we are having our Big Pride event is downtown, at main downtown area in Springfield, Missouri. We would love for anyone who can to come out and walk in the parade. It's just 0.8 of a mile. We meet at 10:30 at 625 North Benton Avenue. It's a pretty slow walk. In fact, there's many times we just kind of stop and wait. But it's fun to be with everybody. We've never had a huge turnout. We would love to have a huge turnout. And if you cannot come and walk, wear your t-shirts and come out for a half hour, just so that our LGBTQIA plus community can see, well, I want to know more about that. What is Unity about? So they can know that there is a place that they can come to where they are going to feel that they are seen, that they are valued. They're going to be told that they're worthy, that they're good enough just the way that they are. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for your willingness to lean into this, for Unity of Springfield to be a part of this. It just touches me at the deepest level of my being, because I do know that there are still so many people out there who are feeling so lost. And if we can help one person, then that ripple effect can help many, many other people. So I say to you, the Christ in me, that goodness in me, that worthiness in me, sees and honors and celebrates the Christ in you, that goodness in you, and that worthiness in each and every one of you. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you. Okay, now as our band, our awesome band, and our awesome ushers come forth, we have this opportunity to be in the flow, to support who we are, what we are becoming together, all of the things that we are excited about creating through the gift of our treasures. Many ways that you can give to Unity of Springfield. So let's take our gift in our hand, and if you give a different way, take the energy of that. And be conscious of this blessing, and let yourself feel the energy of it, okay? Together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And thank you, God.